And Anonymous also provided their pronouns as she, her, and that's so wonderful. So as you email in, if you could provide your pronouns so that we make sure that we're addressing you correctly when we talk about stuff.
Yes, that would be lovely. Tell us where you are. Tell us your name. It doesn't have to be your real name, and tell us your pronouns.
Woo!
Woo!
TLDR. What is a good policy for lending money to significant others?
Oh, boy.
Hi, Allison and Gabby. I love listening to your advice to these questions, and it seems like you both are quite level-headed in relationships these days, LOL.
Fuck off.
That's the best burn compliment I've ever received. So I would love your input on this question. I've been dating someone, they, them pronouns, for about a month, and it's going pretty well. The other day, they asked me to loan them a small amount of money to buy some items before they get paid next. This sort of made me uncomfortable because I'm quite frugal and generally have a policy of not loaning money to people. However, I come from a quite privileged background. Although I'm fully independent now, 24 years old, I am still reaping many benefits from being supported by family in the past. For example, no student loans or car payment. My partner has not had those same advantages, so it seems sort of cruel to not loan money when it means very little to me and means a lot to them. However, I worry about this becoming a slippery slope. What is a good policy for lending money to significant others?
Oh, wow. Well, I happen to have a podcast called Bad with Money, and I wrote about this in my book, Bad with Money, but I think you have to draw up a contract. I know that sounds weird, but I think you have to put it in writing. Like, hey, is this a loan? Is this something you're paying back? Is this a gift? What does it look like if you're paying it back? Are you paying it back with interest? Are you not paying it back with interest? And it's perfectly fine to be like, this is a gift. I just think like sometimes things can get a little messy and you think like with love, we don't need contracts, but like, and not even an official contract, just an email to each other. That's like, here's what this is. Here's like in writing what the deal is. Like if it's before they get paid next, then you're just kind of advancing them money. It can really get messy and in the way of a relationship to start putting money as a thing. So like you should have in writing like, hey, I'm advancing this to you. What day do you think you will be able to pay me back? You know, having different levels of privilege and different levels of money in relationships is hard because I think resentment builds when you feel like you're the one paying for everything. But it depends on like who you are. Sometimes people don't care. Like I dated a guy who like truly was like wealthy and like truly didn't care and gave me money for, I had like car repairs, just gave me money for the car repairs. And I said, are you going to miss this? Do you need me to pay you back? Do you like, you know, and he was just like, I promise you, I won't even notice this money is missing. And that was lovely. And I just had to like swallow my pride and accept it. And I felt like really lucky and happy that this person loved me and wanted to help me. But if it was something where that person did want the money back, then that we should have established that like from the jump. It shouldn't be ambiguous at all. And I think we should have like, you know, we would have put it in writing or something. And even if saying it's a gift, we should also have put it in writing, but we didn't.
Why do you need to put it in writing if it's a gift?
Because what if the person comes back couple years later, you break up and they go, I want my money. And it wasn't a gift, it was a loan. And you don't have any record of that.
Right.
And it sounds shitty because you're like, I'm in love. This is a loving relationship. I don't want to like think about contracts. I mean, even, you know, you and I are very pro prenup. Like Mal was like anti-prenup when we met. And then now like we're getting into some joint spending ventures. And they wrote up a contract for us of like, you know, who's doing what, who's spending in what percentage and what would happen if we split up, you know, who would have to pay who back and who would not and that kind of thing. And I think that that's really good and smart. Are we planning to break up? No, but you don't know what could happen. And I don't want it to end up in a situation where we're thinking out of anger or, you know, like there's nothing holding us accountable. I think it's very soon. A month in is very soon for them to ask you to advance them money. I think that's something you should super keep an eye on because then you don't want to start a precedent of this being a thing that you do all the time. And I think it'll tell you a lot about this person. If you say, hey, I'm not really comfortable with that, and they come back and they lash out and they're mad and they're like, whatever, you can learn a lot about who they are. And if you want to be in a relationship with them, through how they take you saying this. I don't think it's cruel. I think it's something that you can tell them, I don't want this to taint the relationship. I don't want this to be something that becomes like an ongoing fight between us. Because what if you do it this one time and then like, the next time you're like, hey, I don't really want to. And they're like, but you did it before. I just think it's a bad precedent to start. I mean, obviously, like, don't do it if they're like, well, I'm going to starve or I'm going to be out on the street or whatever. Like, obviously. But that even to me is worrisome because it's like it starts a precedent where you're not equals in a relationship.
What do you think about that philosophy of like, if you're going to loan money to friends or family, to just assume you're not going to get it back? And like, even if you say, yeah, pay it back, like, you have to be okay with letting that money go in order to do it.
I don't think that's fair because it's not giving people the agency or the benefit of the doubt to make themselves like level with you and to set it, like if you're giving it as a gift, be explicit. This is a gift. You have to. And if it's a loan, then you have to trust that this person is an adult and they understand the implications of loan and they have a set date where they will be paying you back. Even if it's like a year from now, 6 months from now, whatever. And again, like have that in writing. And obviously don't give money away so that you're destitute or that you don't have, enough to live on, and like only give enough, that you can still survive and thrive. But I wouldn't take it as like, you're never going to see that money again. Because that sucks. Like that's, if you explicitly say it's a loan, and then you're counting on your friend to like pay it back and and you're assuming they're never going to be able to, like that assumes that they're irresponsible. That assumes that they're, taking advantage of you. Like I think two adults can communicate and be like, we have set these terms.
Do you think it's appropriate to have interest on that loan? You mentioned that earlier. Okay.
I wouldn't have interest on it. I only said interest because I feel like sometimes parents do that where they'll like, they'll like give you money for college, but you have to pay it with interest. Or, sometimes some parents do that just to like, I don't know, be hard asses. I'm not really sure. Or because they need it. But, and again, like, yeah, I would never charge interest because then you could just go to a bank for the loan. But yeah, like you have to set up the terms. A month in is really soon to ask for money. And I'm only saying this because I have dated people who, and I'm not saying your partner's a grifter, but I have dated people who were kind of griftery and they always needed help and they needed help all the time. And like, I get it. I think like a differential with money is like they're being vulnerable by asking, but also you have to see the patterns. Like, is this someone who asks for money from their friends all the time? Is this someone who to be like someone who pays things back? Is this like, I don't know. I was trying to think of it in a way of like, then it's not sort of just taking. I don't know. I don't know because I get nervous because there are so many people who are just the type of person that it's like always an emergency. Like I've dated people where it's like, there's always an emergency. Like now I'm here and something happened and now I need money. And it's like, not like a thing where it's like, oh, this is just happening one time, but it's a thing where it's like, there's never not an emergency. And like I also don't want to be like, I lived my life in these ways that were, I didn't have anything and I don't have parents that can give me money and like all this kind of stuff. So it's like, but I think I always kind of figured it out. But like, I don't want to put that on other people and say like, well, why? Maybe asking you for money is their last resort, and like, or maybe I've had resentment, right? Like, so Mal comes from, their parents have a little money. And when we were looking at apartments initially, they were like, my income is higher, but they have parental help that I don't have. And they were like, well, I only want to pay 1/3 of the rent of where we live. And I want you to pay 2/3 of it, which considering my income makes sense, but I don't have parental help and they do. And I just was I had this chip on my shoulder about it. And this was like a year and a half ago or something. And I was like, why is it always people who come from money who want a nickel and dime, who want to be like, well, I'm only spending this amount, like I was like, how come I'm the person who doesn't have parental help and worked really hard to make my own money and live independently? And I'm like, I'll cover whatever. And it's the people that have parental help who are like, I'm only going to put in 500, you know? But then I wonder if that's because that's why they're better at money, because they are just putting it, they are just being like, they have more money because they are more, I don't know. I think I still have like a lot of a chip on my shoulder about it. So like, but I don't think it's healthy to have a partner who's like, well, you come from privilege, so you should help me. And like, you come from this background, so like, I'm not even asking you for that much. And like, you know, like, I just think it's just like super unhealthy dynamic.